Hey everybody, thanks again for tuning into Spreeisms, my blog all about mental health and finding ways to protect your peace. I'm Kirsten Spreewell, aka Spree, your resident therapist, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So the Spreeisms team thought it would be dope to talk about a couple topics that aren't heavily discussed. In the mainstream conversation around mental health. So we are discussing childhood trauma, but more specifically how it affects us as adults when it goes unchecked and how it affects adult relationships. Now, this is a topic that has a lot of moving parts to it. So I broke it down more specifically to ways that it surfaces in our relationships and how we can address it. So stay tuned, let's get into it. First, we will discuss exactly what trauma is. Now, trauma results from a particular event, a series of events, or a set of circumstances that a person experiences to be either emotionally or physically harmful. And it causes adverse effects throughout a person's life, either socially or in their workplace or with their emotional health or with their physical health and well-being. Because trauma often surfaces to our health, to our skin, the way we communicate and all of these things. And so that's why trauma ends up affecting us in our adulthood. It ends up affecting us in our adult relationships. And when we don't address it, when we don't have some serious conversations, when we don't check the way that we relate to people and check our own toxic traits, when we don't go to therapy, when we don't have tough conversations with our family members who wronged us in the past or who we've wronged in the past, it will definitely affect the way that it will affect our pattern. So it's not only going to affect the way that we relate with our family, but the way that we start relating with other people. And specifically in our developmental years, those years up until about 7, 8 years old, where we really start identifying our worldview. That's just the base of it. Of course it expands. But in those developmental years is when it is very serious and is very important for us to have those lessons of how love looks like, what love looks like, and how we speak to people and how we address people and what we expect from people. And a lot of times we see that through our parents or our caretakers, and that is what we end up emulating later on in life. And so you might have heard the phrase or people talking about how they have become their mothers, or they have become their fathers. And it is very true that if we don't address things, we can repeat things. So I want to talk about a couple ways. I have about 6 or 7 ways that I pointed out that I typically see trauma start to affect adults and our adult relationships. And let me let you know up front, I can definitely relate. So if you can, definitely drop some comments below and talk about how you are addressing any toxic traits that you have witnessed or identified yourself to emulate. So drop those down in the comments because I wanna know. Let's get into it, and maybe I'll share 1 or 2 of mine. So my very first one, and like I said, I have several, so we're gonna pop on through these. But the first one is if you realize that you suppress childhood memories. This may be something you want to explore more with yourself or with your therapist. Why are you suppressing childhood memories? If you don't remember things, what is it about what took place in your childhood that you are suppressing? So even flashbulb memories, if you have a set of memories but a lot of black spaces in between where you don't necessarily remember everything, but you just remember flashes of instances. This is something that we want to reckon with. This is something that we want to identify and explore. Why is it that you are suppressing? What is it that you are suppressing? In addition to that, you may not necessarily feel that you even had a childhood. For those type of experiences, there's a set of traumas or circumstances, a parentified role where you were the oldest and had to take care of all your siblings. Where somebody took your innocence away. These types of situations are where people identify that their childhood was stolen. And so they may not have memories like everyone else of certain things that took place in their childhood. So if that is something that you resonate with or that you can identify with, then go back to those instances and things of what took place that actually, made you feel that you had to grow up instantly or had to grow up in a short period of time. Because these are the things that we want to go to therapy for. These are the things that we want to go and have conversations with people with. These are the things that we want to journal about. These are the things that we want to work through. So think about that as well. So the second thing is that if you find yourself in a series repeatedly in unhealthy or toxic relationships, why is that? We always say, what's the common denominator, right? So if you see yourself always in a situation that isn't working out, whether it's at work, you're always having to leave, whether it's you leaving or, you getting fired, what is it about you? What's going on with you that is causing this series of unhealthy relationships consistently throughout your life? And sometimes it's that the idea of a healthy relationship is foreign. If you've never seen that, then you do not know how to practice healthy communication, how to practice healthy boundaries, how to practice, not being toxic and checking yourself. Additionally, childhood trauma can cause low self-esteem. So if you are not built up throughout your childhood, if you have, experienced verbal and emotional abuse from caretakers and people in your family, then you may experience low self-esteem, low self-worth, hopelessness, and helplessness. And this will cause you to engage in unhealthy relationships that don't value you because you don't value yourself inherently. And it hasn't been taught to you to value yourself to a certain extent or to set certain boundaries to a certain extent. And so when you experience unhealthy childhood relationships, unhealthy or insufficient love, then you will start practicing this later on in life. You will treat yourself that way, the way that other people have treated you. And you will allow people to continue to do that if you do not address what actually happened, what actually took place, and how to build yourself up. If you do not practice self-care skills and self-love skills and start building yourself up and breaking down what you've previously been taught and reteaching yourself really what love looks like. So the third one is if you fear rejection or if you fear vulnerability, this will negatively affect your relationships. This may cause attention-seeking behaviors, doing things inappropriately for people, being too nice, being too friendly, opening yourself up for people to exploit you. Just not being wise, not setting good boundaries. You might give too much information online to a new person who you really like. These types of things that you see adults do often, and these are the types of behaviors that we want to address. We want to address if we see our friends engaging in these type of behaviors, our cousins and our nieces and our, aunties, whoever it is. We see adults behaving this way, and you would think that adults don't behave this way, but when you are affected by so much trauma, a lot of times trauma will have you behaving the way that you would if you were that age. It kind of stops the processing. We have to go back to nurturing that child, reteaching that child within you, those certain things that you may not have gotten, those negative things that you've picked up over time or did to feel loved and to feel connected with people. Another thing is just with fearing vulnerability, and especially if you grew up in a household where you were insufficiently loved, then you will definitely stray away from those. Some people may stray away from those type of connections because it's triggering. Those are the type of connections where everybody you ever got close to left. Everybody you ever got close to hurt you. Everybody you ever got close to insufficiently loved you, took, and never gave. These types of things that happen in our childhood, it's a level of programming, like I said. So trauma will definitely rewire, childhood trauma especially, will definitely rewire the way we connect with people, the way we engage, the way that we think. It will rewire all of that, and it's all about undoing, unlearning, and relearning. So trauma will definitely affect different people different ways. It can make people more aggressive, it can make people shy and retreat. But one thing particularly that I see often with people who have been traumatized in their childhood is that they communicate in a very passive aggressive way a lot of times. So if you grew up in an environment where your opinion, your thoughts, your emotions were not valued, or if you grew up in a household where you feel like you were always on thin ice, this can cause you to be passive aggressive and not want to directly address the situation. You may be afraid of conflict, especially if you grew up in a household where there was domestic violence, or a neighborhood where there was gun violence or gang violence. There could be a level of programming there, and I've seen this before, that people feel like conflict always means yelling, fussing, cussing, and putting hands on somebody. So they are afraid to address conflict or address something directly because of what they've seen conflict do. And so if this is something that you can relate to, we definitely want to start practicing assertive communication, challenging those thoughts. Don't you deserve to have your boundaries respected? Don't you deserve to have your emotions be expressed? Don't you deserve these things? Challenging those things within you that cause you to, be passive or be passive aggressive rather than coming out and saying it, coming out and expressing it, coming out and dealing with it. So another thing that childhood trauma can do in relation to how it affects us as we grow up, how it affects us in our adulthood, is it can really make us have low self-esteem. It can really make us feel the way that people treated us, the things that, family members might have said growing up can become our truths. And we can really start manifesting the things that other people speak over us because we do not have the self-esteem, the confidence, nobody built us up. If we grew up in a particularly negative situation, right? Even the environment, the representation in your environment, if everybody who looks like you is a certain way, it can cause you to start manifesting those things. And those are the type of circumstances that become traumatic for us over time and create adverse effects over time. Really just that low self-esteem that we see a lot of people who have been traumatized experience and express. And so we want to work on building ourselves up. That's putting yourself first. That's setting firm boundaries. That's doing all of these things that are just our daily self-care habits, of learning that no is a complete sentence, learning that you are beautiful, learning that what your unique talents are, learning what you bring to the table, all of these things to build up your self-esteem. Another thing that I see often, number 6, is emotion regulation issues. So some people, just have no flat affect. They are withdrawn and are not emotionally there all the way. They may dissociate completely from being who they are or what they've experienced. It can be a lot, a lot of more extreme things, but I want to stick to the things that we see all of the time. And really, that is just, the rage, the anger, the resentments, the pent up emotions, the pent up feelings until they explode. All of these things are due to poor emotion regulation skills. And so that's something that I definitely recommend getting treatment for. That's something I definitely recommend, coming into your sister's circles and your brother's circles and really getting help with friends, getting help from your friends. All of these things, because this is something important to address. It can cause the abused person to become the abuser. And in my work daily, I see kids with emotion regulation issues. And it is a lot of the times because of learned behavior. So really quick story time, because I don't want this to be too long, but I see the way just being doing therapy in people's actual environment, going to their house. I pop in on them, and it'll be, during time where everybody was supposed to be having their chores done. And mom is, cussing everybody out, which in every way. And then when engaging with the client, or when engaging with a sibling of the client, I see the same behaviors. And it is always, almost always down to, that is what is normal in this household. And that is the circumstance in this household, which can be traumatizing over time, and even create a level of physical rage, physical aggression that a person will experience. And again, we talked about, if that's what you see, that's how people manage conflict in your environment, then that can become a part of what you practice if you do not address it. And so it is important to address these things, especially if you have urges to hurt people when you get upset, or to hurt yourself when you get upset. Okay, and number 7, the very last one that we will discuss for this video, is if you are an adult and you have trouble still identifying who you are, right? We're always discovering and rediscovering who we are, no matter how old we are. But it is important to really have a grasp of like that base of your morals and what you believe and what you like. As these things change, just being able to know yourself. And if you are an adult that struggles with a knowledge of self, this may be due to some things that have taken place in the childhood, or even the type of parent that you may have experienced as a child. A real authoritarian parent may not allow their child to explore, may not allow their child or encourage their child to, talk about who they want to be or things they want to try. And you have to do exactly, what they say that you are supposed to do. And then if you have an uninvolved parent, a parent who is not supporting you, not going to games, not engaged with you at all, this will cause you to have low self-esteem as well. We talked about that, right? Not feel valued, not feel appreciated, not feel important, and not feel important enough to learn yourself, not feel important enough to be with yourself. A lot of times people who don't know themselves are always trying to be up under everybody else. And so if you see that you might have these habits and that they resonate with you, let's talk to our therapist about these things. Let's reach out and let's check ourselves. Let's take self-inventories around what our toxic behaviors are and how we can address these things. I hope this video was not too long, and I hope that you got something useful out of it. But until next time, I wish you all your version of success, happiness, and peace.